Hello, we're here with Hal Fray in Houston, Texas. Good morning, Hal.
Good morning, Brian.
Would you like to introduce yourself and who you are and would tell them what we're going to talk about?
Well, this is Grandpa, and we're going to talk about a trip I'm on, and I'm talking to you as you've heard from Houston, Texas. It reminds me of Edward R. Murrow talking from London to people during World War II, because that's something you only read about in the history book. But I'm glad to welcome you on this holiday morning. Now, probably Brian, who's right here, and Jim, who's standing beside him, Jim Reynolds, doesn't even remember that this is a holiday. But I never forget that April 19th is Patriots Day. It's the day when we celebrate Paul Revere's ride during just before the Revolutionary War, reminding the patriots of New England whether the British were coming by land or by sea. And I always remember Patriots Day. So good morning to you on April 19th. Now, Jim Reynolds and I are on a trip. We're on a 2.5-week bird venture into Texas to find the birds that migrate through this area. I expect that before the 2.5 weeks are over, that Jim and I will have seen over 200 species of birds. One of the things that you ought to remember, and this is a word to you from Grandpa, develop a good hobby in your life, because a hobby will provide you a lot of fun for a lot of years. I was remembering my first time that I went out birding during the Depression years. That was 1935, with a neighbor who took his son out and asked me if I wanted to go along. And if you can imagine this, I still have in my drawer at home my first bird list of 1935. Now, I didn't really seriously begin to get into my hobby until 1984, when your grandma, Harriet, and I moved to Newton, Massachusetts. 1984, let me back up 20 years, 1964, as we moved there, and there were so many good birders that I just picked up the hobby and have had a good time ever since. A moment ago, I spoke about the Depression, and Derek, I was delighted to give you answers to your questions about how I lived, what I did during the Depression. I'm not going to repeat that now. It's on the record for you, and the rest of you as grandchildren, if you want to, you can ask your parents about it. They won't remember the Great Depression, but they'll remember maybe some of the things I said about it. The Great Depression was a very significant event in the life of America, and we probably didn't begin to recover from it until the beginning of World War II. And I'm awfully glad that so many of you were able to come down to Green Valley, Arizona this last winter and spring and visit with me and with Martha Belle. We certainly enjoyed having you there. Particularly I enjoyed Eden at 3 years old, seeing you so delighted to go into the pool and swimming. That's fun to start out like that, and you have no fear of the water, and I know that your mother and dad are going to really help you as you develop in that. And Elliott, that hat, that cowboy hat that I had, looked so good on you that we were glad that you took it home with you. And also Sage, you had a great time looking at the birds on the feeders that I have around the yard. That's the nice thing about where we live. I was able to turn our yard into a small bird sanctuary. And then I also enjoyed stopping to see you last fall in Oregon. So that's the beginning of my story.
At the end of tape 1, going to tape 2.